Bullshit.
Welcome to the No BS Marketing Show. In this episode, you'll hear the audio from Dave's recent webinar presentation for members of JARI, a large economic development organization serving Western PA, about how to build your brand. Here's the audio. Enjoy.
All right, welcome to the What Makes a Great Brand webinar. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to business and nonprofit leaders from the Johnstown region. Always love working with JARI. We have space that we rent from JARI, and that's worked out great for Massolutions. I don't know if everybody knows I'm a native of Johnstown. Grew up there, spent a great deal of time there, moved away to Pittsburgh, still come back and have made a commitment to the Johnstown region with an office there. And we have a number of clients in Cambria, Blair, Bedford, Somerset counties for Massolutions. I like to start off, since it's close to lunchtime, by getting everybody hungry with the Chipotle image. And I do that for a couple reasons. One is that anytime you're doing any kind of presentation or deck, keep in mind that one big idea tends to make more of an impact than 25 words on an actual screen. Why do I use Chipotle? I guess a number of reasons. I like their food, but my teenage son really loves Chipotle. But the bigger reason is the founder of Chipotle, Steve Ells, has a big idea, and his reason for being. Was a chef that was frustrated that when he tried to have sustainably raised foods for anyone, that it was more difficult for people to have sustainably raised foods at an affordable price. So he came up with his why. His sustainably raised ingredients should not be an elitist pursuit. It should be something that everyone is able to have. I make that point because that's their mission statement, if you will. But when my son says, "Dad, let's go to Chipotle," he doesn't say, "Hey, I'm really looking to get some sustainably raised ingredients, Dad. Let's go to Chipotle." He goes to Chipotle because he loves the whole atmosphere. He has some preferred items that he eats, but he's not even thinking in terms of sustainably raised ingredients. Doesn't mean all Chipotle customers are like him, because there are multiple segments of any business. But my point is that many times our why, our mission, our reason for doing the companies that we form is important to us, and it's what drives us, but it might be less important to some of your customer segments. So I give an example for us. I started Massolutions for a similar reason to Chipotle, except not with food. I felt throughout my career, I would see how many companies really didn't understand marketing. Even when I was at these large multi-billion-dollar companies as a chief marketing officer, people within that company didn't even understand real marketing. So I believed that real marketing should not be an elitist pursuit. It should be something everyone's able to have. But when I talk to a client, I say, "Hey, we think we could help your company. It's going to cost this much to do X and Y, and we want to make sure everybody in the world has real marketing." They kind of care about that. They find it to be noble, but really they want results from their marketing. They want to know what solutions we come up with, and did we do it on time and on budget. The key point is, when we come up with our why, our mission, our reason for doing the company, it isn't exactly the same as what the customers think. And that's why when we want to build a great brand, we have to start by asking 2 why questions. Now, that first why was in a great book, Start With Why, by Simon Sinek. I'm hoping that many of you have read that. If you haven't, it's probably about 7, 8, 9 years old, but it's worth the read. And it's Simon Sinek, Sinek, Start With Why. The premise of the book is ask your why. Why do you do what you do? What's your reason for being? And I gave you Steve Ells of Chipotle's reason for being, and I tongue-in-cheek gave you the Massolutions reason for being, similar to Steve Ells in wording. But the reality is true that when I started the company, I was perplexed at how few people understood what real marketing was. So your first why is your why or reason for being. And what we're going to do is have you think about that while we're on the call. And I'd like to have at least 1 or 2 people volunteer to tell me their why. And while we're getting the people to have the courage to do that and to post on the chat. I'm going to explain to you how you can start with this first why, your why or reason for being. Have a meeting with your leadership team and ask everybody to, during that meeting, not prepared, don't tell them in advance, just say, everybody gets a sheet of paper or an index card. What's your why or reason for being for this company that we're in? So let's say there's 5 or 6 or 7 of you that are in the leadership team. You write that out. Then you gather them up and you write them all on the board, dry erase boards or whatever in front of you so everybody can see what similarities are there and what differences are there. That's a start towards defining your why. Then ask some employees why they work at your company. Because if their answers aren't similar to what you had on the board, that might mean that your why isn't quite where you need it to be. So the goal is to first answer one of the 2 why questions is your why or reason for being. The second is to answer your customer's why or reason for buying. Now, remember when I started out and I said this was Steve L's reason for being for Chipotle. Sustainably raised ingredients should not be an elitist pursuit. It should be something everyone's able to have. But is that why we buy? No. So you have to ask that second why question when you're building your brand, because you have to be able to meet your customers' needs, your customers' why or reason for buying. So the first why is your why or reason for being. The second why is your customer's why or reason for buying. And we have being on both slides, but that's just a typo on our part. It's your customer's why or reason for buying. What I want to do now is, Heather, can you tell me, has anyone chimed in? So I would like someone to unmute their mic and walk through the name of their company and talk about what they see their why as today.
The name of my company, Michael, is Eternal Remembrance. We're a new company. We just launched in April. But the why for my company is a friend of mine's father was killed in a trucking accident, and the day of his final committal at the gravesite, there was hundreds of people that stood and watched this parade of trucks that drove by his final committal, about 60 of them all shined up, large commercial vehicles. He was a truck driver, owner, operator that was killed in a commercial vehicle accident. And on the final day of his final committal, I mean, all these people come out to see this and to pay a final tribute to him. And I wanted to be able to tell his story, you know, what happened that day, because the next day he's just another mound of dirt in a crowded cemetery with nothing on his headstone. So that's my why, is to tell people stories that their families might forget about, or people may have never known, or they've met people in their lifetime that may have never met their family and have stories about their loved ones. So that's my why for existing.
That's a heartfelt, passionate, compelling why. And I think that that's going to be a big part of your overall brand. So I like that. And it's admirable what you did there. So you've got that first part of the why down pretty well. What I would say for you, the advice I would give for you, is to take that and sharpen that. So it probably only took you a minute and a half to get that out. If you can sharpen that up, that speech, so it's like more prepared speech, but it's not a canned speech. You can have a heartfelt 25, 30, 35 second explanation of that why. In your instance, that why is going to be a big piece of the second why too, which is your customer's reason for buying. What I would say you could do from yours is you take that first why that you have, a why you started the company, and then start telling stories about how you've impacted families who have purchased the service. So you're now telling your customers why, and you're telling that story. It's going to be similar because I'm sure they want the remembrances, but you'll be able to use specific testimonials on that. And the ultimate goal will be to take these 2 why questions and have the answers to create one big idea that drives your storytelling. So your opportunity will be to take those 2 whys. The first one you've crafted pretty well. The first bit of advice I would have for you would be to continually hone it so that it's concise and quick, but still conveys the emotion that you conveyed there. And then look at some of the successful examples of when you've done this for others and take their why and bring that in so you can turn it into one big idea that's a concise message that you can use, that's as a tagline, that's as a slogan, that's as a quick message anytime you're on the phone or you use on your website or you use any kind of direct mail or direct email. That would be the example that I would give to help your company.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Do we have anyone else that would like to offer some of their perspective on their why? I'm going to give you a couple of examples to help emphasize these two why questions, answers that lead to one big idea. The first is a story that I like to use pop culture references throughout my workshops, webinars, keynotes, videos, etc. The movie The Social Network is a movie about Mark Zuckerberg that actually kind of paints him in a negative light for the most part. If you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing it, but I'll give you the quick encapsulated version is that the movie starts with something untrue, but it makes for a great opening of a movie in that Mark Zuckerberg's girlfriend supposedly breaks up with him and he goes and creates this hot or not type app that really apps weren't even known then. So I guess it was just a website. And it then grew. And whether he stole it from these twins who had the idea as well or not is the whole premise of the movie, but he turns it into Facebook. What ends up happening with a lot of these companies as they start is they have a great idea, they begin to use it, and they begin to lose money. They go get funding to sell part of their company. They continue to lose money. So what they were trying to do is they talked to Sean Parker, the man who created Napster, which changed the music industry because it enabled us all to illegally download music for free. So they get Sean Parker because he had monetized Napster to a degree. And there's this scene where Sean Parker is with Mark Zuckerberg, his main partner, and another key team member. And it's played by Justin Timberlake, and he did great because he was basically playing himself because he's similar to Sean Parker, and there's all this energy, and he's telling all these ideas back and forth at a restaurant, and the movie makes it real dramatic. Then he gets up to leave, and he leans in, and he says, lose the. And the reason he said lose the was at that time they had named it the Facebook. And I tell you this story because words matter. The name of the company was only 2 words, but it would be quite different if it were named the Facebook than Facebook. There's really no way to argue it, just the way you would phrase that. I'm going on the Facebook as opposed to hit me up on Facebook. Little things like one word, lose the, can change your brand, can help tell your story because words matter. So that was why when I talked about your first example, that the more concise you can make that, the brevity that you can find in telling your why, and then combining that with some of your customers' examples of their why. When you do that and you can hone that down and reduce the number of words and take the answers to those 2 why questions and make them one big idea, and you can lose the to make it concise, that's when your brand begins to make an impact. And that's when you begin to get brand recognition first, then brand awareness, then brand equity. I realize we're a quiet group on this webinar, but I do want to make sure that I give you a chance to type in any questions or unmute your microphone to ask me any questions so that I'm not just throwing all this stuff at you. I also want to give you time to think and ponder what I'm saying. So any questions or thoughts? I'll dig into some examples, and I'm going to start with one that shows you how you first achieve brand recognition, then brand awareness, then brand equity. I was involved in a company that started out with a couple of big hospitals, then picked up another say 5 or 6 hospitals real close to the first two, then began to expand throughout a state, then began to expand throughout the United States, and then began to expand into other countries. And I was there in the go-go days when we were really hitting our first piece of growth, and we had to try to get brand recognition. I almost got fired because we had spent millions of dollars on brand recognition, and yet the company name was coming back in our market research as incorrect. So the brand I'm talking about is UPMC. And our big idea was choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. And when we began using that, we knew that we were playing off of an emotion. Since you're a quiet group, I'm not going to make you answer, but the emotion that we were playing off of is happiness. No, not happiness. When we did some work for Twin Pops, the popsicles you can get at Walmart, it was great because we could show smiling twins in the sun eating the Twin Pop. That was playing off of fun, happiness, excitement. But the emotion we were playing off of was fear. We wanted people to know that they need to take their healthcare seriously. Choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. We were all excited. We got this great thing. We started out these amazing TV commercials. And I get a call to the boss's office one day because he had done some market research I didn't know about. Usually I was involved with all the market research. And this market research was to see what our brand recognition was. And I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was high enough that I remember calling my wife on my cell phone, walking over saying, I think I'm going to be fired. Because it was something like 38 or 45 or some percent. So let's just say 38% for sake of argument of people were asked about this company's name and they were calling it UMPC. I was frightened. My wife was pregnant with my second son at the time. And I remember thinking, this is bad. So I was able to save my job, but that's when you're talking about brand recognition. We didn't even have brand awareness yet or brand equity. So we wanted to build that brand and we had to use this big idea. And we never for a moment thought that the name might be the issue. People remembered the commercials, the music, the scenes, and they remembered choose your healthcare as if your life depended on them. But we hadn't even yet got the name because it's hard for everybody to believe on this call. But when UPMC started, it was late 90s and it was cobbling these hospitals together. And we didn't know it as UPMC. You called it the University of Pittsburgh or you just didn't know and you called it UMPC and got me in trouble. So we then had to continue with our messaging and we pounded it in more places where we had just the UPMC and just the slogan, a lot more billboard outdoor to supplement the TV. We began to get brand recognition and then we started to get brand awareness very quickly within a year or two. And then we built brand equity. And once we had that brand equity, we were able to change this marketplace forever with a health insurance plan and to change. There was a monolithic monopoly almost on the health insurance side with one company that people would actually say, I get my Blue Cross and Blue Shield from Health America. Now imagine that. That's what we were battling. I get my Blue Cross and Blue Shield from Aetna. I get my Blue Cross and Blue Shield from Health America. That's called a brand because they had over 70% of the market for commercial insurance. That's pretty close to a monopoly. And that's some great brand awareness. And in every state in the country, Blue Cross, Blue Shield had that kind of equity. So we were battling that. But I tell you this big idea because it's a long, big idea. Choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. So I tell you that because in today's day and age, there's been this era for about 10 years of the 3 words, each with a period after them, to tell or to blink 20 words. So when you're thinking of your big idea to start building your brand, know that one of the biggest brands that's been built in this region in the last 100 years has a long one. Choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. Now, we also had that same dilemma that Steve Ells from Chipotle had. At Massolutions, my reason for starting the company was I had been at all these big companies and had huge budgets, and I saw my friends would have these smaller companies. They own $50 million in annual sales and 300 employees, or $20 million in annual sales and 70 employees. And I just thought, boy, their marketing stinks because they don't have the budget. But then I realized I would meet people that had tiny companies and they still had good branding. And so I realized, oh, it's not the budget. And that's why I wanted to make sure anyone could have real marketing. But my customers want results on time and on budget. So that's why we go with Mass Solutions, bold solutions, no BS. And I built a brand across the country as the no bullshit marketing guy, which is good to have, because then when I get to sit at the table, I can come in and say, not only do I have brand recognition, I have brand awareness, and I have brand equity for both me and my firm. And I can say, I'm going to tell you how it is, no BS. And if I get the sense you're a BSer, I very quickly extricate myself and my company from the situation, because you're not going to get marketing results. So that's a shorter one, bold solutions, no BS. Now, we also had the chance to work with a great organization a few years ago, and they told us what they were trying to accomplish, and we helped them with their big idea. And that fantastic organization is JARI, growing your region. 3 words, but it sure does tell you what JARI is all about, what they've had a history of doing, what they're doing in the past, the present, and the future. JARI, growing your region. So those are 3 examples. One, the long one, UPMC, choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. Mass Solutions, bold solutions, no BS. JARI, growing your region. I give you 3 examples because one is a multi-billion-dollar company. When I was there, we grew from $3 billion a year to $8 billion a year. Now it's up to about $13 billion a year. Mass Solutions is a small business, just like probably everyone on the phone, and we were able to do it. But you might say, they know marketing. Well, JARI doesn't have a multi-billion-dollar budget. They're not spending $500,000 a year on branding, but they were still able to build their brand, JARI, growing your region. Tom mentioned that his for eternal remembrance is connect, celebrate, honor. Now, he had told you how he had decided to do the company. He told you the mission so you could hear what was happening there. I encouraged him to shorten that so he can have a more concise, quicker hitting conversation, and then have something that he can have whenever he has a short conversation. So he's going with connect, celebrate, honor. That'll give him the opportunity to explain each of those 3 words when he gets a chance to sit down with someone. So he's well on his way to getting the big idea down, and then that segues nicely into the next step, which is building your brand. Once you've answered the 2 why questions, come up with your big idea, and you begin to push your big idea to get some brand recognition. Next, we want you to build your brand. I told you I like pop culture references. These 2, many people will say they didn't see or never watched these shows, and that's okay, because no one has watched every show, even when there was only 3 channels and no cable. So I will explain to you why I use these 2 pop culture examples, and hopefully some of you at least know a little bit about the 2 shows. I would think that you've probably heard of them, or on Mad Men, you might know Don Draper, played by John Hamm. Mad Men is a show about the ad men of the 50s and 60s who were called ad men, but then decided to call themselves madmen because they lived a life that was really kind of crazy. So there was a lot of drinking going on. So if anyone's watched the show, they know what I'm talking about. But Mad Men really focused on a guy by the name of Don Draper, who was they're portraying as one of the best big idea guys of his era. And I can relate to a lot of what Don Draper does because it's a lot of what I've done throughout my career, but there's a big difference. Mad Men portrays the show as Don Draper's drinking some whiskey, lays down on the couch in his office, and then comes back with a pithy big idea. And while I have definitely come up with ideas in weird situations and used anything from exercise to alcohol, I have also come up with many marketing ideas in a much more systematic way. And so I say Mad Men focuses on the art of marketing. And unfortunately, that is the perception that the vast majority of people have. And that's one of the reasons they become BS marketers and don't do real marketing, is they think that marketing is an art. And what the Mad Men era people did was they wanted to mystify advertising. They wanted to mystify branding. They wanted to mystify marketing. Why? Because it's self-serving. You're unable to be seen as this person who just can somehow, that's an art. I can't be like that. I've always been the opposite way and said it's an art and a science. So the show Silicon Valley becomes the part that shows the science, or the big catchphrase the last year or two is math. When you use math and quants, well, that all still falls under the science, in my opinion, but call it science, call it math, call it quants. What the Silicon Valley show makes fun of is Silicon Valley. So the show Silicon Valley makes fun of how these amazing, brilliant techies come up with all these ideas, but they lack the social acumen and the creativity of the art side. So the show makes fun of all the things that they do that appear to be, whatever your phrase is, nerdy, geeky, whatever, techie. I give these two examples so you remember that it has to be a combination of Mad Men and Silicon Valley. It has to be a combination of the art and science of marketing. So on this slide, everything to the right is the quant, the science, the math, and everything to the left is the art. So when you take a look at the right, define the target audience, track marketing ROI, generate leads and revenue, conduct marketing intel. To the left, stir emotions, make it memorable, tell your story, and be unique. If you're building your brand in a no BS way, you're having the science help with the art so that the science can be driving some of the creative. For example, we found when we were building the UPMC health system, we would go out into outlying areas, whether it was Johnstown, Somerset, Katanning, Indiana, Newcastle, Butler, even Fox Chapel, O'Hara region here in Pittsburgh. We found through our research that we would hear phrases describing the local community hospital like this. Phrases like, oh, that's a first aid station. If I have to go to the ER, I go there. Another phrase, and again, mind you, this is late 90s, early 2000s, so the world was a little different, but they would say phrases like, I wouldn't take my dog there, which now wouldn't necessarily have as much clout as it did to us when we were hearing that research 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, people would say, I wouldn't take my dog there. It's a first aid station. Anything serious, I go to Pittsburgh. So we were using that type of description that people had about their community hospital when we were building the health system. And the beginning of the health system was to build the hub of the core hospitals, Children's Hospital, Shadyside, Presbyterian, Montefiore, Western Psych, McGee Women's. All of those were the hub of the system. We knew to take that market research and come up with something that would immediately catch the eye and ear of someone that did live in Johnstown or Katanning or Indiana or Du Bois or Newcastle or Butler. And it was choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. So we were playing off of the research. So when you define your target audience and conduct marketing intel, market research, and you are able to do that, that should drive your creative. So you say, well, Dave, we don't have that kind of money. I totally get it. And that's why you're going to use the do-it-yourself approach, the DIY approach. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to conduct marketing intel, and you're going to do it in a qualitative manner. What I mean by that is you don't need to do 1,000 interviews. You don't need to do 500 interviews. You don't need to do 300 interviews. What you need to do is a couple dozen interviews where you're going out and asking the same questions of current customers, past customers, raving fans, referral sources, and people that you trust. So those 5 areas. So current customers, past customers, raving fans, referral sources, and people you trust. I'll take the referral sources one for a minute. Most businesses have someone that refers them business. Even if you're a professional services firm, even if you're B2B, you have someone that refers you business. It's not just healthcare that has referral sources. So you want to make sure you're talking to people that have referred you business. You want to talk to people that are raving fans. I say raving fans because they can end up referring you business. I have people that have never met, and I'll get someone will reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, so-and-so said, I need to talk to you. And I go, great. Then I very quickly go and look up so-and-so because I've never heard that name before. And here they heard me speak, or they came to a workshop, a keynote, they were on a webinar. So this can happen for you. You have referral sources. So you need to ask current customers, past customers, referral sources, what they think about your company. You also need to ask employees. And you're going to ask a couple of open-ended questions. So if it's a customer, a current customer, or even a past customer, this question is a two-part. The first part is, why did you start working with us? Why did you start buying from us? The second part is, why do you buy from us today? Did you start buying from us, and why do you buy from us today? Now, those are two different questions because it could have been, I started buying from you because my cousin was working for your company. That's very different from, why do you still buy from me today? I still buy from you today because you're awesome at X and Y, and your price is better than D and Q. So you need to ask, why did you start buying, and why are you buying today? Oh, I started buying because my other company went out of business, so I had to find somebody, and I called you. But I'm still buying today because you do this really well. Second question, what's one thing you'd change about us? Be prepared to hear something and be prepared to hopefully act on it. What's one thing you'd change about us? And the other question is, have you ever referred us to anyone? Followed up with why or why not. So you now, in a few simple questions, find out why they bought from you, what's the one thing that keeps them buying from you, what's the one thing they change, and believe me, write that down because that's why they'll eventually leave you if you don't fix it. And have you ever referred to us? And the answer oftentimes is going to be no, but then shortly thereafter, in the ensuing weeks, the answer will turn to yes because you mentioned that to them and they will then refer someone to you. And if they have already referred to someone, why? And if they haven't, why not? So you've now learned a ton through marketing intel. That's what I call DIY marketing intel, do-it-yourself marketing intel. Any questions or thoughts? My goal here today is to introduce some concepts that can change your company if you apply them, and to give you some real life takeaways. And those questions are real life takeaways in addition to the two why questions and how you begin to build that brand. Now, the define the target, that part that's on the right side, the math, the science. Define the target, you need to dig into your own data. Most companies do not leverage the gold in their data that they already have. So one thing is the Pareto principle is something you've all heard the actual part of it. You might not know the name of it. The Pareto principle is that 80% of our business comes from 20% of our customers. And this rings true regardless of industry, business to business, business to consumer. It comes pretty close. We've done thousands of companies, and the worst we've ever seen is like 74% amount was brought to by 25% or something like that. So it's the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customer base. That'll ring true. Dig into that. Look at that from two perspectives. One is, so who should be in this 80-20 that isn't? Because there'll be someone not in that list that you'll say, wait a minute, there's this big company right down the street that could buy from us and they're hardly buying anything. The second surprise will be that you'll see someone who is in that top group of customers that you didn't think was. So now you've already began to target your customers just by doing the 80-20. You begin to see what the similarities are of your top customers. That alone should enable you to segment in one or two ways, maybe even three. But you'll want to segment based on what the similarities are, because when you segment, that means you're chunking current and prospective customers by certain ways. The most common ways for business to consumer are demographics, age, income, etc., or geographics by region. But you can also use behavioral segmentation, which is usage, what they buy, when they buy, how much they buy. So someone only buys in the summer, or someone only buys around Christmas. Someone's a high user, mid user, low user. So that's behavioral segmentation. And then psychographics is a more intense segmentation that is a little more sophisticated level, because the best way I can describe that is Mountain Dew knows that they attract risk takers. So you notice their advertising tends to focus on risk takers, that type of persons. That's psychographics. Now, on the business to business side, there's a term called firmographics, because if you're a B2B company, the odds are that you will segment by things like size, annual sales. We target companies $10 to $20 million in annual sales. That's in our 80-20. But we also target companies 50 to 100 million. So you use firmographics to be able to segment, and that helps you to define your target. So if you conduct the marketing intel and you define your target, that enables you to then drive that creative on the left to stir emotions, make it memorable, tell your story, and be unique. We knew that we needed to reach women who make most of the healthcare decisions, and we also knew that they were concerned about losing their doctor or not being able to see the doctor they wanted when they were switching health plans. So that messaging then became, nothing comes between you and your doctor. Then the closing line was, choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it, UPMC. So that's why I'm saying you have to define that target market and conduct marketing intel so you know what each of the target markets think, feel about you, and then be able to create that, stir emotions, make it memorable, tell your story, and be unique. So you're then combining Mad Men, the show, and Silicon Valley. You're combining the art and the science of marketing to build your brand. So the takeaways: answer the 2 why questions, your why or reason for being, and your customer's why, their reason for buying. Remember that words matter. Remember the story about the Facebook, lose the. Keep the words to a minimum. And then combine the art and science of marketing. Remember that by Mad Men being the art, Don Draper coming up with amazing big ideas and slogans after laying on his couch in his office and drinking whiskey. In Silicon Valley, all their decisions made by the quants, by the math, by the science. You don't want to be either of those 2 extremes. You want to combine the art and science so that you're able to define your target markets. You're able to do some do-it-yourself marketing intel, market research. You're able to take what you learn from those target markets and that market research and the marketing ROI metrics that you have. Take that and drive your creative so you can make it memorable, stir emotions, and be unique while telling your story. And that's how you build your brand. We have time for questions. So if anybody wants to either unmute their mic or send the questions along to Heather, I will do my best to answer them.
Hey, Michael, it's Tom again.
Yes.
I did reach out to you on LinkedIn. I'd like to maybe talk to you a little bit further after this, if it's possible.
Yes.
I don't know necessarily today or anything, but very soon, because we're getting ready to try and redo some of our website in order to tell that story. But my problem I'm finding is, we have such a unique product, and it takes so much to explain what it is and what we do, that it's difficult to make an ad, and to create. Creating brand awareness is one thing, but also then you have to advertise it. So, until you have that brand equity and brand awareness, how do you create ads that are meaningful, that are short enough to catch people's attention with something that's so different? I know you're not going to be able to answer that in this question, but it's a battle that we're having, and maybe you can shed some light on it.
Sure, I will. And I would like to talk to you afterwards. And both Maria and Heather are here. Maria is a content specialist who works a lot on my content, the company's content, and our clients' content from a social media and a video standpoint. So she might be on the call with you, and then Heather's here to help coordinate things to make sure we get it scheduled and be able to do a phone call. So real quick, anyone on this call, whether it's JARI representatives to try to promote JARI or other small businesses or yours, Tom, you're going to have to do social media in today's day and age, and you're going to have to do video. So the challenge is going to be to hit that sweet spot where you can do video that's not completely done by yourself unless you have a background in that, which you may. But what I tell clients is you can do it yourself in some instances, and sometimes that's even better. But there are a lot of instances where you need to have at least some level of outside help on the video. It doesn't have to be like the old days when you couldn't get video for less than $20,000, $30,000, even at the most basic level, which is why 15, 20 years ago, not many people were doing video. But it's also got to be better than just grabbing your iPhone and doing it, because there's tremendous value in scripting it out and creative direction and content ideation. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be like 3 cameras and the production level of a UPMC commercial. Obviously, it's not going to be that. But it does need to be a little bit more than just do it yourself. Can supplement it with some do it yourself, but really try to have some level of ongoing content that's done at a better production level than do it yourself, supplemented by some regular do it yourself footage. Then you push that out via various mediums on social media that match up best for your company. We have a number of companies that are business to business, so LinkedIn can become a great vehicle. We also have a brewery that we have done some work for, and that brewery is going to use Instagram way more. They're not going to touch LinkedIn. So you need to pick the medium based on that target market and based on that marketing intel that I mentioned, and decide which medium you're going to use, which 1 or 2 online mediums you're going to use, and then build your video, have some other written content, still can be visual, can have pictures and so forth, and combine all that in a systematic way in the social media outlet that reaches your target market. So that's the start of it. Now, there's many, many other things that we do with clients where it's traditional media and PR and video and ads and pay-per-click and everything, but I'm giving you just a basic thing that video has to be a part of every company's strategy, and social media does as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I agree, and I look forward to talking to you guys sometime.
This marks the end of another episode of the No BS Marketing Show. Remember to ask yourself, what's the big idea, and build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.